Four Knights of the Apocalypse chapter 137 is out, and this was another great chapter. We opened things up pretty bombastically from where we left off, and we kind of slowed down towards the middle half, and then we get another big reveal towards the end, as well as some pretty interesting pieces of information for what we can expect at least the first section of the time skip to focus around, which I will get into once we get towards that later portion of the chapter. But before we get into things, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. It really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel, and it shows you want to see more. I've been really enjoying these time skip chapters, and I cannot wait to see what happens next. So let's get right into the chapter. Chapter 137 of Four Knights of the Apocalypse, titled Forest of Sloth and Envy. This literally comes into play in the last 5 pages. I know that's technically a spoiler, but I assume the majority of you who are actually watching these reviews have read the chapter already. Anyway, the cover page is literally just Gowther's disfigured arm that he used to hit Pelgar with an attack, and a panel of Pelgar at the bottom holding his head, seemingly trying to fight off Gowther's mind powers. But the very next page, we see that Pelgar is like, do you really think I cannot handle this? As literally he just charges up his attack, swings his giant iron mace, and just says, none of your cheap tricks could work against Pelgar's iron will. Besides, you're far too wounded to bring out 100% of your power. And then he swings his iron ball straight towards the group as he engulfs them in his funeral pyre. A giant flaming wall surrounds all of them. Really quick piece of information. Even though, with what we know in the later portion of this chapter, Gowther technically is not at 100%. He lost an arm and a leg, so chances are he ain't in fighting shape if it isn't obvious. But yeah, I just don't think that really attributes to his own magical capabilities, just physically, and Gowther is by far physically the weakest sin, maybe outside of Merlin, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, they are surrounded by this flaming storm, and it is slowly encircling them ever so slightly, and it seems like they can't even escape. As Donnie just says, it looks like Pelgar really was their enemy after all. Pelgar goes on to say, don't resent me for this. That vortex of flames converges towards its center, burning down anything in its range, as we see everybody beginning to slowly be engulfed and surrounded by the flames. Pelgar says, I'm glad we were able to talk today. Farewell. As the next page is literally just a giant fireball that it encroached everybody, and we even see the charcoal that it's leaving behind, as we soon cut to Pelgar's little castle with the smoke piling into the clouds. As we see the aftermath where nothing is left, that whole area is charged straight to the dirt. As the Chaos Knight that is with Pelgar says, I knew you had it in you, sir. There's no saving them now. He even picks up On's rapier, which was melted by Pelgar's attack, saying that there's no way they survived this. And the goofy Chaos Knight, along with his mindless minions, just kind of dance off in the corner to celebrate their victory, even though they basically did absolutely nothing. The first 11 episodes of the Four Knights anime are up right now on Netflix, and I just wanted to say that looking back, it really shows just how far apart the likes of like the Four Perils and even some of the higher tier knights are just that much powerful than the fodder knights Percival has faced throughout the story up until this point, and even I presume this guy is more or less kind of just fodder. But as these knights are dancing, Pelgar looks up at the sky and says, let us meet again. As it then cut to On, Donnie, the older brother Sylvain, and Gowther waking up, asking if they're alive and where they are. As the next page is revealed that Thetis is there, finally making her debut in the time skip, and roughly 30 chapters since her previous appearance. That is practically a year now that she has not been in the manga whatsoever. Now, I made a bingo board for Four Knights for this year, and on it I said Thetis shows her power. This was not that, so I am not cleaning off the bingo board, unfortunately. But yeah, they're back in Britannia, and they're all wondering what happened. As Gowther gets up, saying that Thetis came through for them. But being all a little bit snarky, she just says, yeah, thanks for just occupying my entire lunch break, you guys. Donnie goes over to ask Gowther how they survived, because they were surrounded by those flames. Gowther just ends up saying that the way the flames were consuming all the vegetation around them, it left enough room to kind of create the ideal space for Thetis to open a doorway to Britannia and bring them back before they were basically engulfed by flames. On is asking if it was pure luck, but Gowther clarifies no, Pelgar actually helped them. He created that whole circumstance to help them escape, as the attack that Gowther landed was obviously Gowther's broadcast. With that, he transmitted the information Pelgar needed to help them escape and make it look believable so that he didn't seem complicit in their escape, and maintained his standing as one of the strongest knights and most loyal knights in Camelot, despite him not wanting to fight them whatsoever. Heck, the whole encirclement wasn't really fully in Gowther's plan. Pelgard improvised that on the spot, and Gowther even apologized to Anne because he literally threw her rapier over because they needed like a way of evidence so that nobody would suspect that they had survived Pelgard's attack. So I guess leaving something behind, especially something as precious as Anne's rapier, would more or less be a good way to leave behind some sort of evidence that your enemies have basically been burnt to a crisp, nowhere to be found. And Donnie ends up asking Gowther about that whole Mindstorm thing he was talking about, and Gowther just says, I just made the whole damn thing up. Honestly, I kind of like when Gowther just does random bullshit just to mess with people. That tends to be Bond's thing, but I just like it when Gowther, the guy with actual powers to literally scramble people's brains, could come up with some sort of attack like that and just make it up right on the spot just to screw with people. I'd probably do the exact same thing if I had his powers. But everybody calming down, Thetis ends up asking if they learned anything new during this round trip to Camelot. An says that they learned a decent amount of new information, but still no news on the Cauldron, the prison that seemingly anybody accused of treachery or basically trying to sabotage Camelot has been sent. Gowther says that, and they still have some fearsome people on their side, looking over to Beltrop, who literally split the sky and cut off Gowther's left arm and left leg, seemingly effortlessly, surprising even Gowther, as he even said that he was stronger than he initially anticipated, building up the threat that is Camelot, and I cannot wait to see more of this. But then Donnie brings up some interesting piece of dialogue, as he basically says Isolde and Chion are both looking for Tristan too, but no leads yet, and says maybe it's safe to assume he's in the Cauldron like they figured. So Tristan has disappeared. Chion and Isolde are looking for him God knows how long, and one of the main reasons why they were looking into the Cauldron was because presumably Tristan might have been in there. So that would be an interesting thing to go for, and I think this is what this first part of the time skip is going to lead up to. The reforming of the four Knights of the Apocalypse, or at least three of them. Right now we have no idea where Lancelot is. He might still be sulking and hiding himself away in Benwick. Gawain is still nowhere to be found, and Tristan is nowhere to be found, but they assume he was taken captive by Camelot. There's still a lot we don't know, but the fact that Tristan is MIA gives us enough information that he might be a prisoner of war at this point. And the question ends up being, what happened these last 2 years? Where is Tristan, and if he was captured, how was he captured in the first place? There's also the possibility that Gawain is the prisoner of war, but since they haven't mentioned her at all or any concern for Gawain, chances are she's off doing her own thing for all we know. But yeah, that is a strong possibility. Tristan might actually end up being the prisoner that they were looking for. But it's still interesting that they don't even know who the prisoner they're looking for is. Donnie ends up bringing up how Meliodas is taking things, but Thetis says he's doing well, at least on the surface. So it's obvious Meliodas is obviously worried about his son, but is trying to keep a calm front to not make obviously the people of Leonis panic, and as well make Elizabeth worry even more. And just, yeah, he's a king and a father. He's got to keep his act together even when he wants to go out and raise hell to find his kid. Thetis looks over to the guy that they brought with them, and Anna introduces him as someone who fled from Camelot. She begins to mention his sister, but he says, it's not your fault, don't worry about it. Anna apologizes for the things that she said, that they were terrible, and it wasn't the time. She said them without thinking, but he said, don't worry, you saved our lives multiple times. And introduces himself as Boris, as she introduces himself as An, and they shake hands. Thetis goes on to say that not to change the subject, but Gowther, if you're free, pay a visit to the palace so I can fix you up. And even mentions that Bon paid an unexpected visit to the capital yesterday. Gowther then pops up his head and says, alright, I'll gladly pop my face in then, probably for a joke as Donnie is freaking out in the background, and as Gowther holds up his severed head, he says, did you tell King and Diane too about Bon? As Thetis says, more or less. But you know them, the fairies and giants' sense of time can be very loose, which is very true. As we then finally cut over to the fairy realm, as we see a bunch of fairies floating in the area, a giant mushroom, and that really nice landscape shot. As we were teased with this back before the time skip, as Team Percival was supposed to go to the Fairy King's forest in order to essentially talk to King and Diane and maybe get some help from there to find a way into Camelot. We then cut to somebody picking berries as they find a mutated belladonna plant. As somebody begins to perhaps, I think, like speak through telepathically What is a human like you doing here? This is the holy forest of the Fairy King and Giant Queen. As the person picking the berries looks up and says, "Telling me again, TIOREH?" Popping out of the tree, we finally get the proper manga debut and introduction to the daughter of King and Diane, TIOREH. And that is our first thing off our bingo card, the appearance of King and Diane's children. Specifically TIOREH, I'm just encompassing it all in all because we're definitely going to see her siblings at some point. And yes, she has siblings because TIOREH has been marketed very heavily with the 7 Deadly Sins Origin MMORPG open world game, where she and Tristan are essentially like the main characters in that game. And she was part of a lot of the marketing and was even showcased some of her abilities throughout that game's trailers and gameplay. So people have been hyped up to see TIOREH for well over a year now, ever since she was first revealed for the gameplay trailers. So with that, we basically get all the kids for all of the sins right now. Interesting piece of information that was also said, TIOREH is the 7th child of King and Diane, meaning that they have 6 other children alongside TIOREH that will probably get introduced to in this series, unless that was retconned for the manga for all we know. But that'll be very interesting. Either way, with how heavily TIOREH has been stated to be in the game and her appearance now in the manga, she's gonna be the most relevant character at this point, and I legitimately cannot wait. Based off of her introductions in this chapter and her interactions, she's a very upbeat, bubbly person and tends to just view the positives of everything and is very attached to people, as is shown with the person that she is talking to in this chapter. They go on to say, "Oh, you saw me?" As the person says, "Is this alright though? Your mother and father don't like you being with me very much, do they?" As she goes on to say, no. That's not true at all. Mom and Dad are crazy in love with you. But the person begins to walk off and says, "Don't try to gloss it over. I know a lot of fairies don't have very much favor for humans." As TIOREH just grabs the person's hand and says, "I just told you, that's not true at all. Hey, listen to me." As she pulls the hat and reveals that this is Nazienz. As Nazienz has officially cut his hair, cut his bangs, and now we see his full face right off, and this is his post-time skip design. Seemingly still having his basic herbalist attire, just with shorter hair. He has the simplest change out of the main Percival trio, and I kind of like it. It's simple and makes him look kind of cool as well. And also, I just like that Nazienz has seemingly been in the Fairy King's forest in the fairy realm, basically looking through herbs and different berries, crafting different poisons and medicines, as, the fairy realm would basically be the ultimate treasure trove for a herbalist and pharmacist like Nazienz to make more medicines and poison. So it makes sense why he would stay there as well. And it seems like he's developed a very strong friendship with TIOREH over these last few years that he has been there, presumably. And it seems that they will be the next pair that we'll see within the oncoming chapters. And we'll probably see King of the Am within the next chapter or two, which I am very excited about as well. Anyway, Nazienz ends up asking TIOREH if she wants to accompany him to the Tunnel of Whispers to test out a new medicine. She says yes, but wait, there again? As Nazienz says yes, with the final page of the chapter being the two of them heading towards this cave, saying, "This is the resting place of my hero," with the chapter ending. And my goodness, was this an awesome chapter. Not only do we get the main group basically being brought back to Britannia, meeting Thetis, and even dropping some interesting pieces of information like Bond going to Leonis, Tristan being missing for God knows how long, and Meliodas obviously trying to keep it all together, and Tristan might be the prisoner that they were looking for in Camelot, but now we see TIOREH's official introduction into the story, and Nazienz introduced post-time skip, as he has been in the Fairy King's forest for a while seemingly, developing new poisons and medicines with the herbs and berries that he has found there. And he has developed a strong relationship and friendship with TIOREH, which I cannot wait to see this next couple of chapters to see their dynamics. The next chapter is also called Nazienz in the Fairy King's Forest, which is interesting because a good piece of information as well is that they're seemingly going here in the Cavern of Whispers is where Percival is presumably sleeping. So we might get an actual explanation for how Percival is still technically alive but hasn't woken up, and Nazienz making these new medicines is probably a way to try and bring Percival back to consciousness or fully revive him from the dead for a week. So I'm kind of curious to see how this is going to play out and the proper explanation for Percival's revival. But that's really all that's left for this chapter. What did you guys think? Did you enjoy what we saw here? What do you think is going to happen next week? Do you think we'll see King of the Am with the next chapter or two since we're in the fairy realm? How do you think this time skip is going to play out? Are we going to go with what I thought that we were going to go with, and is a reformation of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse post-time skip all stronger than they ever were before? Or do you think we'll just focus on getting Lancelot, Tristan, and Gawain back together for an official way to revive Percival by the end of the next arc? Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, and if you haven't already, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you enjoy the content I'm making on the channel and shows that you want to see more. I cannot wait for the next couple of chapters, and I know for a fact that we are all hyped for more. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.